Alrighty. And I don't know exactly when this is going to go live, but as soon as it is live, I will do the podcast intro, and just remember that we're basically on a podcast. So, you guys in podcast/YouTube land may be seeing this right now, and I want to just go ahead and welcome everybody to the podcast. Actually, now we're going to do it for real. And hello, everybody. My name is Clifford Stummy. I'm the pop song professor. I'm here with a special guest today, and this is the first, well, I guess it's technically the second recording of this podcast live on the internet. So we've got some cool behind-the-scenes footage of this podcast being recorded live. It's out there in YouTube world, and you can definitely go check that out. It should be in a link in the bio somewhere. It's going to be super fun. And if you are watching this on YouTube, count yourself blessed. You are actually watching the live recording of this podcast. Not a lot of people might show up tonight here on good old YouTube live streaming, but I think a few might. And you guys, you who stay up late and procrastinate on homework assignments to instead come and hang out with us, by the way, which we appreciate. You guys get to see this behind-the-scenes podcast, and we actually want your comments to be a part of this. So if you guys have thoughts or ideas about Coldplay's Viva La Vida, a fantastic song, by the way, be sure to comment those. Let me go ahead and introduce our special guest today. If you don't know her, she is my wife, actually. Her name is April, and her last name is Stummy. She's going to be joining us today talking about Coldplay Viva La Vida, and you may be asking, what exactly is her qualifications for doing this? And by the way, we see you guys in the live chat. You are awesome. Thanks for saying hey. It is going well, and we love you guys. But her qualifications for this, April, maybe you should tell us what makes you think that you're qualified to talk about Coldplay.
Because I really love Coldplay.
And that is all the qualification that she needs. To talk about a band, all you really need to have is strong feelings about it. And April has those for sure.
I do.
Didn't you spend hours growing up just like listening to their music while lying on the ground?
Yeah, when Ghost Stories came out, I believe that's the album. I'm going to sound really stupid if that's not the album name.
It's not.
Really?
Yeah. It's Death and All His Friends, or Viva La Vida.
No. The album Ghost Stories.
Oh, well, okay. I thought you were talking about the one that we're talking about today.
Okay, when the album Ghost Stories came out, all the songs kind of flowed into one another. And so I turned off all the lights and just laid on the floor and listened to the entire album all the way through, which is kind of a time commitment. And worth it. I highly recommend it, but it will make you sad.
Which is why I don't listen to it. I only listen to music that makes me happy or makes me want to dance or makes me want to think. And
Coldplay makes you want to think.
Yeah, not about sad things.
You listen to sad songs.
Every once in a while, maybe. It's an exception, not a rule. They're, cool, though. Coldplay is boring.
Excuse you.
Anyway, not Viva La Vida, though, because Viva La Vida is an awesome song, and we're going to jump into it. Opinions, explanations, thoughts, concepts, all of that kind of stuff. And we, again, just want to put out a special hey to all of our live chat people who are joining us for this. You who are listening to this from podcast land, you are going to probably appreciate this a lot just because these people are going to be saying the things that you are thinking. Except for Riley Tremblay. He just asked, or she asked, is that your sister? No. That's my wife. Don't get the two confused, people. But so podcast people, you can thank the YouTube people in your prayers or however you want to thank them.
Thank them in your prayers.
I don't know. I'm just making up crap.
Dear YouTube people. You're amazing.
Don't pray to YouTube people. But you YouTube people, I'm glad that you guys are here. And feel free to comment your thoughts on Viva La Vida at any time. And we will refer to those. And yeah. Juggling videos. I'm actually a pretty good juggler. But this guy, he used it as the backing track for a video he was doing. And would definitely get taken down for copyright infringement nowadays, but he didn't then, and it was really cool to listen to, and I really liked it, so I looked it up, and it was one of the earliest MP3s that I purchased in my MP3 purchasing days. Now I just do Spotify, and yeah, I really, really liked it, and so I thought, this is fantastic. So did that, and now I've moved on to a lot of different songs, and not a lot of Coldplay, honestly. But I still have a special spot in my heart for Coldplay, and so we're going to jump into some of those lyrics. And I've got the lyrics here. For you following us in YouTube land, I have pulled them up on screen. For those of you in podcast land, we will just read them out loud to you. So we've got, I used to rule the world, seas would rise when I gave the word. Now in the morning I sleep alone, sweep the streets I used to own. I used to roll the dice, feel the fear in my enemy's eyes, listen to as the crowd would sing. Now the old king is dead, long live the king. 1 minute I held the key, next the walls were closed on me, and I discovered that my castles stand upon pillars of salt and pillars of sand. Now we're going to have two different perspectives here, because I've done research and I've read what the band has to say about what this means, and April is going to play the part of somebody who's a super fan, and is going to interpret it personally.
I don't think I'm a super fan.
You're a super fan. If I'm a super fan of 21 Pilots, you're a super fan of Coldplay.
I don't think you're a super fan of 21 Pilots.
Maybe you're right. I think I am.
Okay.
But so what do you think that he's talking about there in that stanza?
I mean, I think it's pretty clear he's saying that he used to be, like, in charge or honored or revered for something. People looked up to him, and now that's no longer the case. He's sort of talking about, like, a fall from grace or something like that.
Right. If you guys look at the cover of the album, it's a picture. What is it? It's something Liberty. It's like the death of Liberty or...
Oh, yeah. It's like them recreating that picture. It's actually the Virginia seal.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Which says Sic Semper Tyrannis, which means thus always to tyrants, and it's Lady Liberty stepping on the chest of a tyrant. It could be King George III.
Yeah. No, I think you're very, very accurate there. It's actually painted by Eugene Delacroix, and Rafa E. Oliveira is saying French Revolution, I guess, and I think it might be French Revolution, especially because you have that Lady Liberty. The painting looks very French, honestly.
It does.
And Eugene Delacroix is a French name, as far as I know, so I wouldn't be surprised if it had some connections to the French Revolution. I believe you're correct on that. But what is happening in here, according to what the band has said, is they are talking, basically April's exactly right, but it is somebody who has fallen from grace. It's not Chris Martin, though. In this, they were trying to tell the story of somebody else, to get inside the head and the experiences of just some person they made up. I think the album actually had a lot to do with rebellion, and that's kind of the theme here. It's just that in this song, they took it a little bit different, and they are looking at it from the side of the tyrant. You said, Sic Semper Tyrannis, thus always to tyrants, and they are trying to show it from the tyrant's point of view. So that's why he's sweeping the streets he used to own. He used to roll the dice and have all these experiences, and now the walls are closed on him, and his castles stand upon pillars of salt and pillars of sand. So the rebels essentially have taken over his kingdom.
And I think one of the things that's really cool about this song is that I think you get a lot of songs that are sort of catering to their audience a little bit, and maybe, like, you and I have both felt as if we've fallen from grace, but of course it wasn't our fault, right? It was somebody else being an idiot. And this song is much more like he's fallen from grace with everybody else, but he's also fallen from grace with himself. Like, he's looking at himself and saying, yeah, my castle stood on pillars of salt and sand, and that was, dumb of me, and I was a bad person. And so it's not like a self-righteous song about, like, well, you all just didn't realize that I was so cool, and then everybody turned on me. It's like, I thought I was cool, everybody thought I was cool, turns out I'm kind of scummy.
I don't know if I pick up the point where he's saying that he's scummy so much as I feel like he's resigned to his fate. So maybe he's accepted his status now as being in like a scummy situation.
You don't think he thinks he's a worse person?
Let's actually pull those lyrics up, because you might be onto something and I may be misremembering it. I think I get the feeling that he wasn't a great person just from listening to this. I wonder if he feels like that, though. So.
But it is all first person, so any feeling that you're getting from him, he's giving that to you, right?
Right, but even, like, your friend could tell you a story like, hey, I did this, and then Susie got really mad at me, and you're like, well, it was kind of Susie's fault.
That's valid.
And the friend might still think that Susie was in the wrong.
That's true.
But he does admit that there was never an honest word, and he calls it a wicked and wild wind that blew down the doors to let him in.
Says people couldn't believe what I'd become.
Yeah, so he did.
He was just a puppet. He knows that Saint Peter won't let him back in.
That is the line. Yep.
Right.
No,
so there's a lot of things where he's saying I did a bad thing, or I was at least stupid, if not a bad person.
Right. No, that's a very fair point, and I think that as we look out at different stanzas, that becomes more apparent. In the first few stanzas there, I think that he's kind of just talking about the situation, and we can kind of infer from it that he's not a great person.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, later on, he definitely kind of looks back on it. I don't think he's necessarily repentant. He says, I know St. Peter won't call my name, but he doesn't sound sad about it. And the song sounds so epic and almost, not triumphant, but it's mournful, but it's very loud. You would think that if he was being apologetic, it wouldn't be grand, right? It sounds very kingly, the song does. It doesn't sound like it's coming from a street-sweeping peasant.
Yeah, so I have grand theories about that, too.
All right,
but
lay them on me.
I think that's what I really like about this song, is that it's, you said that he's just pulling from the point of view of some random person, right? So he's probably writing it from the point of view of a king, or maybe, a French nobleman right before the French Revolution would be pretty likely.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can write that entirely without bringing your own experiences into it. So I think this sort of feeling, and one of the commenters said that he sounds like an egotist, but I think he's really sort of the everyman in this song, because I think we've all felt this way, where we felt like we were up somewhere really high, we were a really good person. I know when I look back on high school, this is how I feel. I was, I thought I was really cool or really up there, and then I look back and I think I don't know that anybody really thought that I was that cool, and I don't even know that I was that cool, and I just feel a little bit bad about it. And I think that there have been times, certainly, where I felt that in a very significant way, like I just have failed in some grand way, and I think I'm a bad person too. But I think that this song brings a very grand sense about it. Like, there's a ton of biblical imagery. They're playing with a whole orchestra, so they make it really big and grand and dramatic, which is how it feels to the individual at the time. And it sort of validates this, like, yes, this is a big, important thing, while it's still common enough that, like, you and I feel it, not just a French nobleman falling from grace.
Interesting. Very interesting. It's interesting that you bring it to the French nobleman's fall from grace. They are talking about a generic tyrant here, but with the French Revolution picture from Eugene, it really could be. Just to take it to some of these comments here, because Isabella Caston's comment here reminds me of something that you just said. She says, well, that's not a very personal song. And on one level, you're absolutely correct, Isabel. It is not that personal in that it is about somebody else. It's not from Chris Martin's perspective, but it is in a way something that we all can relate to. Yeah. Kind of like you were talking about in high school. You might have thought that like you were a big deal, but you come to college and you're like, oh, I'm actually kind of a small fish in a big pond.
Oh, yeah.
Jacob asks, have always debated and struggled with the meaning of the song. Is it just a story from history? Is it a parallel to some experience in the present day? Am I overthinking it? You're not overthinking it, because according to the Pop Song Professor, you can't overthink anything. Otherwise, this YouTube channel wouldn't exist.
You can't overthink anything?
Well, okay, that's a lie. You're right. Don't overthink love, unless you really want to. I don't know.
We're going to get really deep here, folks.
But no, it is not a story from history, but it's kind of based on an archetypal story of a tyrant being dethroned and becoming nothing and being humbled. Lydia asks, from the tyrant's point of view, and yes, it is, definitely. Does the song change point of view ever, Isabel asks, and I don't think it does. I think it's always from the tyrant's point of view.
It would be interesting to try to get really deep in there and maybe figure that out, but I don't think it's quite that complicated.
Right. And it's always a scary thing when a song changes point of view. You're like, oh, how can we ever know what it means if we never know who's saying something?
Yeah.
A couple of you guys are saying hey, and we just want to say hey back.
Hey.
Shout out to Funny G. Okay. Rafa, oh, who would ever want to be king? They're exactly same phrase in Game of Thrones books. Interesting. I haven't actually read any of those, so that makes sense that there would be a lot of kings falling from grace there. Let's see. I'm scanning the comments for any more questions pertaining to the song here. A lot of you guys have really fun stuff I'd love to respond to, but we've got to keep it moving here. Funny G says, it sounds like he was at the top of his life like a king, then so excited thing happened to his throne, and he is now a peasant or so thing like. And yeah, I think you're exactly right. Yep. All right. Let's see. Def sounds like a fall from grace thing for sure. And it's at the hands of people who are doing the exact same thing that he did to them. Let's go back to these lyrics here. He says, it was a wicked and wild wind that broke down the doors to let me in. And now revolutionaries wait for my head on a silver plate. And so maybe he wasn't a revolutionary, but he did take over the kingdom. And now it is being taken over from him. And so that is, I think that's at least pretty interesting that, somebody fought fire with fire in this case, and so he's only getting his just desserts. It's not that he was a really good person and then bad things happened to him. It's like, no, I was a bad person. St. Peter's not going to call my name, and now I'm getting what I deserve.
Right. Yeah, without being super self-deprecating, like, I'm a terrible, horrible person, woe is me. He's very factual about it.
Yeah.
Which is, if you listen to a lot of Coldplay, you'll know that being super factual about depressing things is not typical of their music. They're usually pretty emotional about it, which is one of the things I kind of like.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting sort of straying from their typical field where they're taking a very clear reason to look at a very emotional event.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and take a look at another stanza here. I do want to answer Lydia's question before it fades away into the comments. She asks, what's a lonely string? And she's referring to the line from a revolutionary's way, from a head on a silver plate, just a puppet on a lonely string. Oh, who would ever want to be king? And essentially, a puppet on a lonely string just means he is... It's just kind of referring to the fact that he feels like a puppet. Other people are telling him what to do. He doesn't have autonomy or agency, and he can't make his own decisions. And so he's by himself, essentially, too. So there's not... Like, a lonely string isn't a thing, per se. It's just kind of referring to him as a puppet.
Yeah, and I want to respond to something that Jameson just said. He said that the moral of the song is to stay humble because crap happens, self-inflicted or what. And I think that's certainly a really valid thing to pull from the song. But I think one of the really interesting things about this song is that it doesn't really seem to have a moral. He's just sort of saying, like, this happened and I'm kind of depressed about it. And I think that's a really honest, valid place to be in, to say something bad happened and I don't think it was necessarily everybody else's fault and I'm sad about it. And that's it. And not to have to draw a moral out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting because a lot of art that we think is art demands that you feel a certain way or says, hey, you should feel bad about doing something similar, or there is this moral, like we want to teach you something with this art. And sometimes art just tells a sad story. And then Jameson here comes along and says, moral of the song is to stay humble because crap happens, self-inflicted or what. And he is essentially making his own version of the art, which is a beautiful thing that we're able to do. We're able to interact with it and say, you know, I get this particular thing out of it. But I think a sign of good art is that it is sometimes something that you can do that with because it's so true to life. And true life, real life, has a lot of messages to teach us.
Right, yeah.
So that's a really good point, April.
I think is interesting because, again, it's bringing in the grand and the sublime and the, you know, extraterrestrial, right? This high above everyday life thing. And it is kind of confusing. Yeah. But it's the same sort of general premise of, like, you know, something very grand was happening. You know, the bells in Jerusalem were ringing. So, like, you know, at the time when there were Romans and Jerusalem, right? Jerusalem was maybe the epicenter of what's a major world religion today. So, like, religion was celebrating him, and then Roman cavalry choirs were singing, and that was the hub of civilization. So, you know, both religion and civilization and everybody and people were going out and, you know, being his warriors fighting for him and being his mirror, so telling him he's amazing, probably something like that. And
becoming copies of him in
right,
different
going
places.
out and being missionaries for him.
Yeah.
And then it was like when his support left, which he doesn't condemn them for that necessarily, but when those people were gone, when he stopped being praised, he realizes that it was all over, right?
Yeah.
That none of it was true, and that was, you know, then he fell from grace.
Yeah, and he says once you were gone, there was never an honest word. I don't think he's talking to a female in the situation, but
but it's interesting.
I think he's talking to his power. I think he's personifying it and saying once that position was gone, or no, maybe he had some sort of inspiration that kept him honest, and then he wasn't honest, and that was when he ruled the world. That looks like what's happening. Let me go ahead and pull up that for you guys. Yeah, so never an honest word, and that was when I ruled the world. And that really does reflect on who he was at that time.
Yeah, it really is confusing, and I really think that the place where this song could get a lot more complicated is who is this you that he's talking to? And it's really hard to figure that out. I'm honestly not sure. I mean, and it could just be a really personal thing for Chris Martin. It could be that there's somebody that he had in mind when he said, when you left, nothing was the same after that. And he could be referencing like somebody that kept him honest, right? And kept him from rising to such great heights and falling to such pathetic lows, right?
Right.
But it's just the sort of thing I don't think we will be able to figure out just by, thinking about it for a long time. I think you'd have to ask him, and probably it's not that exciting.
Yeah, and if this person was a person, this person could have like left when he saw the main character getting too dishonest, or he could have decided, I don't want to be a part of this anymore, I wash my hands of it, or it could be somebody that just died or something like that.
Yeah, or it could even be all of the people that are cheering him on at this point, right?
Yeah. Scabby B suggests that it's probably something to do with selling out, and he's talking to his fans. And if this song were from Chris Martin's perspective, I would 100% agree with you. But based on the research that I've done, they're actually telling the story from some actual king's perspective. It's not a real king, but it is a king, just a generic tyrant king.
And now, if I'm correct, I think the song Yellow, which was sort of their first song that went really big, was on the album right before Viva La Vida or Death and All His Friends. And I could be wrong. Call me out, Coldplay fans, if I am wrong.
Yeah.
But I think it would be sort of odd for him to write a song about falling from grace right after he released this album that had his big song on it. And then this album did really well too. Viva La Vida or Death and All His Friends was like probably, if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably their number one album of all time. But
yeah, for me personally, it is, because this song is their number one song of all time for me. But
oh, I think Isabel Casson has got it.
Yep, plot twist. This song is about the Illuminati, she says. You know what? I think that we can probably call it a night. That is very apt. A few other people had really good things to say about this too I wanted to highlight before we move on. Samuel says it is about their music career was going at the time and how they lost it, and inviting people to live their wonderful life. And for them to be on top of the world like they were musically after Yellow went viral or crazy, then, that's a fair theory. Not a Cinnamon Sorry says, I feel like the song truly is addressed towards God or a faith. So you as a deity like that, once a god had failed him or left, he lost control and lied and ruined his life. And that's, that's a possibility too, that this king in the situation could be referring to faith. In any case, this you is somebody who means a lot to this person and kept him honest. And I think that that's probably the best conclusion that we can honestly come to.
Yeah, I wanted it to be about God for a while there. I like a song to God, saying like once God left, he was never the same. I thought that would be an interesting song, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to make that fit cohesively with the whole song. That's not to say it couldn't be about that, but I think if it is about that, it's probably about that in such a personal way that we won't be able to quite figure it out.
Right. All right, well, we are going to go ahead and get close to wrapping up here, guys. The last things we want to talk about are this couple of lines right here. For some reason I can't explain, I know St. Peter won't call my name, never an honest word, but that was when I ruled the world. And this part is one that Chris Martin paid special attention to. In the research that I did, he said he just found it interesting, this concept of somebody knowing that he wouldn't, quote-unquote, get into heaven, right? And so that's what we want to focus on for this last little portion of the podcast. He says, like I just read, I know St. Peter won't call my name. There was never an honest word. But what is it like to know that St. Peter won't call your name? And it's for some reason he can't explain. So it's a feeling. It's not a thought for sure, but it's just kind of how he thinks it's going to end up. And what do you think about that, April?
I mean, it sounds like just the most depressing thing. I mean, can you imagine if you believe in this concept of heaven, that having this deep knowledge that you wouldn't make it there? That would just be, I think it's sort of the climax of the song, right? Is this last little part here. It goes right into the bridge from this. But I think he's sort of, illustrating this big fall down and down and down. And I think the very deepest is saying, even after I'm dead, I'm still not good enough. Like, I thought I was so, so good. But I'm so not good that I'm going to die not being good. Not good enough to get into anywhere where I could ever succeed ever again.
Yeah. And I really don't think there's much for me to add to that. It is kind of what this hopelessness is all about, and it's expressed as hopelessness here on Earth in the first verse, but it definitely gets more eternal as we go further on.
Yeah.
The last line I want to draw your attention to is this one that's repeated 5 times. It goes,
I want to go back to the line just before that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Before you go into ridiculousness. Okay, I think it's interesting too that he sort of says there's never an honest word, but that was when I ruled the world. There's sort of this feeling that where he is now, he's being super honest with himself, and where he was before, it was just all lies. And so it's almost as if he's sort of relieved to have gotten to this point where there's a lot of honesty and he can take a legitimate, honest look at his life. And before, it was just lies. And so he's looking back on that and saying, was it really worth anything to be up there if none of it was really true? And I think that's really powerful.
And then that but, I may be repeating something that you were just kind of hinting at or saying, but that but makes it sound like now he is being honest, right? And so he's kind of coming to that honesty. Okay, good. I want to make sure I was catching that. Yep. Nope. Good stuff. The OOOs obviously are very deep, but I want to turn it over to you guys for a couple of comments before we peace out of here. Funny G says, guys, have you thought that St. Petersburg would not be the one to call him to heaven rather than to judge him and send him to hell? No, hadn't thought about that. Scabby B, could it be about being famous and the things behind the scenes like drugs and inner conflict and reflecting on his happy life before fame? It could possibly, but the research we've seen suggests that it's just a story about some guy. Not a Seminole Sorry says, the narrator probably believes very strongly that he will not be appealing to any god or deity, and he'll never be, or good or deity, and he'll never be good enough. That's how I see the whole St. Peter not calling his name thing. Yeah, so essentially he's not even going to make it past the gatekeeper. Could you do a couple more Coldplay songs?
Yes.
Phantasmal Spectral asks. I think Don't Panic would be great, and it's one of my favorite songs.
Don't Panic is a really good song.
Okay. April likes it, so it might just happen. And Lydia Wharton says, okay, now your explanation has made me really sad. Sorry about that.
Don't be sad. I think ultimately if I draw anything from it, I draw that I should be honest with myself about where I am and encourage other people to be honest with me about where I am and where I sit. And that it's better to be honest with myself about that than it is to pretend like I'm really successful or really amazing. It's more important to be essentially a good person and to have some confidence in my own self and that other people are being, again, honest with me than it is to feel like I'm on top of the world if that means lying to myself.
So even if you accept that I'm not that great of a person, at least I've accepted that now and I haven't.
Yeah, and I can move forward from there because I have a clear and honest view of myself.
Very interesting. I like that. That's a really good way to interact with, I think, that text and to come out with a positive message. Otherwise, yeah, like Lydia's saying, it's very easy to come out with a very negative message.
Yeah.
Samuel says maybe it's how his empire fell, comparing biblical text to express how it was and put some personal meanings of himself personally in it. I'm 14. It's only my opinion. Hope it counts. Everybody's opinion counts, Samuel, so do not worry about that. But yeah, there's definitely some biblical references in there, and I like what you're saying. All right, guys, we are going to go ahead and hop out of here. We appreciate all of you guys for showing up. Samuel, Jacob, Austin, Scabby, A Goner Staying Alive, Funny G, everybody else who's commented. You guys are wonderful, and we appreciate you being here. Just one of the things I usually end podcasts with anyways is just remind people that if you want to support this podcast and be a bigger part of it, our Patreon is a super great way to join us. If you go to patreon.com/PopSongProfessor, it's linked in the description and everywhere. It's a really good place to join the family and to get a little bit deeper with what we do. We don't have corporate sponsors. We have very little ad revenue after ad apocalypse happened on YouTube. And so we really, for this microphone or whatever we end up needing to purchase, we really depend on you guys and just being able to partner with us. And we don't take your partnership for granted. There's a lot of cool extra perks that go with being a patron, so be sure to check that out. And we really appreciate you guys being a part of this. We love you guys. And I expect another one of these podcasts soon. This has been really fun. We've enjoyed everybody who showed up and been a part of this and helped us to make it an even better experience for people who will watch it in the future. So you guys are a huge part of this. We love you. Anything else?
No, thanks for watching, guys.
All right. Talk to you later, everybody. Everybody now go to bed. Get some sleep, people.